Well, thank you very much for being here. This conference is possible thanks to an alliance between the REBOOT project and CAACI. As you many know, CAACI is an international organization that gathers together all cinema institutes of Latin America, Spain, Italy, and Portugal. And we are also in charge of the Iberoamerican Audiovisual Observatory. And at the beginning of this year, we began holding a series of conferences in Berlin. We had a conversation about gender equality and distribution. And here in Cannes, we have another agenda. We will have a conference that will discuss the definition of the European content and the challenges that face in Latin America, among with other topics as youth. For this panel, we have the opportunity to hear to Katharine Sarikakis from the REBOOT project, coordinator and also professor of the University of Vienna. We have also from Spain, Maria Trinidad and also Isabela Garcia, which are both researchers from the REBOOT project. And from CAACI, we have Mariana Vargas, Commissioner of the Dominican Republic, and 𝐂𝐤𝐵𝐿𝐼𝐻, Head of International Affairs from the Uruguayan Film Agency. So I will give the word to our moderator, Maria Trinidad Garcia Leiva. Thank you.
Thank you, Michelle Salazar. Welcome, everyone, to this panel on the circulation of European films, youth preferences, and Latin American markets, presented and organized by the Ibero-American Audiovisual Observatory, CAACI, and the REBOOT project. The REBOOT project is a European Union-funded investigation that is focused on the audiovisual sector and the European film industry, and it aims to connect existing strengths, detect and overcome weaknesses, and very important for us, plan for the future, understanding perceptions, youth, and also trying to, if we can, influence policy and practice. The project is headed by the University of Vienna under the leadership of Professor Sarikakis in partnership with 11 institutions. We, Carlos III University of Madrid, together with the University Institute of Spanish Cinema and the Audiovisual Diversity Research Group, proudly participate in this consortium, and it's an honor for us to participate in this panel with CAACI and also representatives of the Uruguayan Film and Audiovisual Commission and the Dominican Republic. I'm kind of translating things in my head. Dominican Republic Film Commission, Madame Vargas Gurilieva, Mr. Miguel Orizi, thank you very much for the effort. Thank you for everyone attending, and also thank you to those watching online. So today this is a big project. You can find a lot of information in the REBOOT project website, which is the rebootproject.eu. And today we want to share some findings and headlines, let's say, about what we consider are two very important actors in the industry. Audiences, especially young people, and professionals. Because if we understand what their opinions, their perceptions, we can understand circulation better, and we can do something to improve circulation. So beginning with Professor Sarikakis, we will dig into youth films preferences, and then a glimpse to gender issues in terms of their experiences. So please, the floor is yours.
So, hi, thank you so much for involving us here. I need to say that we cannot change the slides for some reason. We are professors and so technologically challenged. Okay, some help, yes? Help. So until help arrives, just to say, we have been, the Reboot project is about the industry and about society. And industry means a lot of things for us. It means professionals, it means the creators, it means also the money, and it means also the relationship with society. The part I will discuss very quickly, because they told me I don't have much time, is the part about the future, both of the industry and society, which is young people and children. So we have surveyed about 4,000 children and young people in Europe. This is one of the largest and newest research with them. And we have spoken with over 500 of those in group settings across 9 countries. And they have been telling us some interesting things, a lot of interesting things. And as we are here gathered, our teams are still analyzing the data. So we hope to be here next year to tell you more. And even anyone who's interested in more on this, the exact details we will tell you as soon as it comes out. Still no slides, but the countries we have been working with is Austria, Belgium, Finland, France, Greece, Italy, Poland, Spain, and Turkey, a nice distribution across the EU. And we take this as an indicative way of how the future of film consumption and film creation is taking place, because we look at children and young people as in 3 roles. One, obviously, to all of you would mean audiences, current audiences and future audiences, i.e. consumers. But we also look at them as industry leaders, future industry leaders and creators, and as policy makers of the future. So it was very interesting and important for us to find out what it is they are interested in. I'm going to give you a little bit of an insight, especially from the Austrian case at this point. The top 5 things that children are saying about European films is that they want to know about different cultures. This is very important when it comes to questions of distribution, right? Very nice, next one. Excellent. And they talk about the importance that stories have, stories that talk about people other than themselves, right? So this, to any smart industry stakeholder, this means a lot of potential, both in distribution, consumption, but also in harvesting, encouraging, nurturing, and developing talent. They say that a good film is not connected with culture in the sense of cultural specificity. So these generations, it means that these generations are far more open than any generation before. And another characteristic that this generation has, meaning kids from 10 years old upwards, up to 25, young people up to 25, the other characteristic that they have is that they themselves are creators. Not all of them, a minority, but it's a very strong minority. It's a strong minority that has self-didactic skills, meaning they learn things themselves. They have different kinds of social values and cultural openness that is, I think, personally very, very promising for any kind of conversation we have about what it means to tap into the potential and the power that I don't know, Latin America has to offer, or Europe-wide has to offer, because we see these children and these young people live in multiple cultures simultaneously. This doesn't mean that they do not have cultural values and characteristics, but it means that their openness, their global character of consumption, and their own understanding of what it means to make films makes them as amazing next future leaders. They emphasize, of course, that the emotions and techniques in the film, music in particular, is important, and they provide some examples which you can read here. An interesting part, I suppose, is to say that it looks like cinema in the old-fashioned way is not a priority because they stream and they consume everywhere. right? But this is also something that opens up possibilities for distribution. They are very good at filmmaking, as I said, and they like very much content that deviates from the personal identity, which is not something we used to have until now. So we are sitting here at a kind of a pivotal moment, I believe, both in the field of production, for sure, because these understandings will enter the industry as long as the adults in the room allow it. But also in terms of policy making and understanding what drives good storytelling together with affectionate storytelling, together with success and visibility and inclusion. Inclusion is something we can discuss later. You can see here, please, next one, some of the things that young people say. It will come as no surprise to you, is that elitism and structures that are prohibitive of financing, experimental ideas or even experimental stages among young creators are obviously prohibitive to their expression, the artistic expression, the alternative. And alternative means here not the recipe-like ways of storytelling. Do I have another minute? Yeah. Oh, thank you. Okay, great. Also what young filmmakers now, we're moved from children and youth to young filmmakers, say to us, you have to see it, however, these three stages, you have to see them in a continuum, okay? As I said earlier, a lot of the children and young people we have talked to, they have talked about the cinema and film as something they consume. They have they know very well what they like, and they're very much, as I said earlier, open to the different, okay? So this means that dominant practices until now may see in the future that they are met with perhaps cynicism or consumers' rejection. I think this is a great thing, by the way. They tell us, next to this comes the idea of inclusion and the idea of not having spaces for their tastes, their preferences, and the things they want to say, the ways they want to say it. And this goes all the way down from what kind of story to tell, all the way down to how we produce the story. And a lot of them talk about teamwork. A lot of them talk about non-hierarchical structures, which of course they have to abandon once entering the industry. And there's a lot of emphasis on cooperation. The problems, of course, are for young people young creators very visible as they identify, as you can see obviously here on the screen, they identify the space and the role of women in the industry in particular as still missing. Not because there are no women or women don't have things to say or they don't know how to do things, but because of good old patriarchal values. We have a few insights here until 2022. The gender gap obviously insists. We have areas where women are better represented than others. But generally, women's roles still remain, behind the camera, still remain of the minority. And the highest percentage we have seen is up to 26, maximum 35%, as female producers or screenwriters or basically, or directors. And this is something that young people have identified themselves also through their own experiences. And I will finish here because I think there's a lot of information that we can share with you, but the numbers at this point are, a little less relevant. We have the numbers. I think the idea is to discuss what can be done and what is the what future steps can be made on behalf of all stakeholders, whether it's industry, us academics, or creators themselves.
Thank you very much. The REBOOT project is a project about the what is, but what will be. So this is one dimension of the project, and now Isabela has to swim across the Atlantic to focus on what film professionals think about the European film industry, which is something that will resonate in many of the professionals that might be in the room, but is very important for others to know. So Isabela.
Hi, good afternoon. Thank you guys for coming. This is part of a broader study about the perceptions and opinions of non-European film professionals coming from South Korea, South Africa, Turkey, and in the case of Latin America, the three largest markets, which is Mexico, Argentina, and Brazil, which is where I'm from, actually. The data here that we're showing in this presentation was collected through 46 interviews in the 3 countries studied, and also online survey that had 239 responses across the region, right? Again, also the results will be reported in September, so there is a whole report with all the numbers coming, if you guys are interested, that will be available on the website. So talking about European cinema in Latin America. So Latin America is a very relevant and key region for European cinema, for European film industry, due to cultural, historical, and linguistic ties, which is quite obvious. But it's important to remember that Latin America is a very vast region with different realities. And although we are focused on the 3 main markets, the 3 biggest markets, every country, it's important in its own right. So we just didn't have the time or the budget to explore them all this time. So talking about European cinema circulation. If we think about cinema, let's look at the numbers. It's very important to highlight that European films do reach Latin America. Having said that, the availability and the numbers vary depending on the country. But one thing that is quite consistent is the market share is quite low. So across the region, usually, in 2003, for instance, it's around 1 to 3%. This is not only the case for European films, it's also the case for national films that actually have a low market share as well. So talking about other windows of exhibition, I don't think it comes as any surprise. Film professionals told us, again, television, free-to-air television has little interest in European films. Pay TV has a few niche channels, so to just give a few examples, in Argentina there is Europa, and Brazil Eurochannel, and so on. But they, again, niche channels with limited reach and streaming. Streaming is a big one. It's quite complex to get data, you know. Relevant data often is not available, but it is clear, and there are a few studies saying that there are European films present. In some cases, in some countries, they have the same percentage as local productions, so it's quite surprising. But it's very important to remember that availability doesn't mean visibility, so just because it's there, it doesn't mean it's seen. And when we talk about with film professionals from Latin America, where does European film mainly circulate? It's clear there are 2 distinct circuits. The commercial circuit, and the main outlets there seems to be art house cinemas, independent cinemas, and the streaming. And the non-commercial circuit, right? Which, again, the main outlets is film festivals and thematic weeks. In the commercial circuit, I guess the exception to the rule, in the case of European films, is films that win awards in festivals or main awards, or the films that are backed by streamers or the Hollywood studios. It's quite obvious. The 2 circuits don't seem to relate to each other. They don't seem to really connect, let's put it this way. They run separately. And although film festivals and thematic weeks are quite popular. Perception. So what non-European, Latin American professionals think when we talk about European cinema. So how do they see it? First thing that comes to mind overwhelmingly in the interviews and the surveys is cinema de autor, followed by art cinema. It's the 2 words that are used to define European cinema in Latin America. And then we have international co-productions, which is I guess not surprising at all, since both regions do have a few co-productions going. State support and cultural diversity. The two least mentioned terms are hard to define, so Latin American film professionals don't seem to have trouble defining European cinema and blockbusters, which shows the niche status of European films in the region. When talking about strengths, the strengths are closely related to the perceptions that the non-European film professionals, the Latin American professionals have. So again, international co-productions comes on top, followed closely by film festivals. So they mentioned this festival, Cannes Film Festival, of course, Berlinale, and so on. State support and cultural diversity, again, there are terms that are highly mentioned. The terms that are not mentioned much are reaches multiple audiences. I guess it goes hand in hand with the fact that the perception that that there are no blockbusters or not many blockbusters. And interestingly enough, IP arrangements, which came out in the survey, but during the interviews, many film professionals mentioned the European policies and the regulations that they have for the film industry and the audiovisual sector in general. So that's a surprising one. And finally, let's talk about the main obstacles. So I'm giving here the headlines. We don't have time to go deep. Hopefully in the discussions, we'll be able to talk a little bit about that more. And it might come as no surprise to Latin American film professionals since we capturing their perceptions. But again, when we talk about obstacles, if we don't think about the fact that the region is dominated by Hollywood films, which is the first thing that is said. It's not just the region. I guess we could almost say the globe, but it's another discussion. And the fact that there is a high concentration of the exhibition and the distribution sector in the 3 countries studied, lack of awareness came out really high, and it's closely related to the limited marketing budget. So lack of awareness here, a lot of the film professionals were mentioning that the media coverage has diminished. For independent films, there are less critics, and also show times are no longer available. This has to do also with the fact that a lot of this information are not available anymore in physical media, and it has migrated to online media. So obviously, it is still available to an extent, but it's a bit harder to find. It is in social media, it is in online media. Limited marketing budget. Again, independent film distributors in Brazil, Argentina, Mexico, which are the ones who usually distribute European films, they have a limited marketing budget. They're not able to widely promote the films. So that's also affect awareness. So the audience sometimes doesn't know where or if a European film is available. High risk to distributors. I'm talking again about independent film distributors. So they have told us that it is quite high risk to buy European films. The European films are considered expensive, mainly because of the currency exchange. There are other issues. And also the fact that it doesn't attract a wide audience, so it's harder for them to get the revenue they need. It mainly circulates, they can only distribute or mainly distribute in theatrical. Insufficient support programs. So here I'm talking about the support programs that exist for the circulation, for the distribution and promotion of European films. There are some programs available, and the film professionals in Latin America have highlighted that they are really important and fundamental, but they also mentioned that the programs are often quite bureaucratic, complex, and that the amounts have diminished over the years. Finally, we're talking about shortcoming in co-productions agreements. Again, many film professionals have mentioned in the survey and as well as in the interviews that the co-production agreements that exist between the regions or the countries that we studied and European countries are quite outdated and don't meet current industry needs. They say that, and we had a look as well, many of them come from the 90s and haven't been updated, although we do know certain efforts have been made recently to update a few of them. They also mentioned that there is a limited information, that the information is hard to find, and it can be a complex process. And the 2 last ones that I'm going to mention are the ones with the asterisk, which are complex ones. Let's put it this way. So cultural differences. When talking about cultural differences, this is a new study on itself. It's a complex matter, but it's clear that language, humor, and accents actually matter, and it can really affect the way it's viewed by the audience or received by the audience or not, really. And the elephant in the room, the increasing influence of VOD services or the streaming. Again, this is a complex one because it depends on who you ask, right? As you could see in the previous slide, it's one of the main channels of the commercial circuit in terms of circulation of European films. Having said that, independent distributors see it as an obstacle because the global streamers usually bypass them and buy directly from the sales engines, so they cut revenue to them, which makes it even more risky for them to buy European films, to put it mildly. If we bypass the distribution part, the circulation part and promotion, there are other matters as well that have been widely discussed in the three countries. If we talk about production, it is seen as a source of financing, but at the same time, there are matters with IP rights, the lack of regulation in streaming, etc. Just to mention here, although I just gave you the highlights, we do have policy briefs about both matters already available on our website. So if you want to read more, please do so. And
Or less.
Or less.
Less.
And also, we're releasing as well the full report with all the numbers, all the features.
And of course, we will be around. So now, I think thank you, Isabela. It's time to listen to the representatives of the Dominican Republic Film Commission, Film Commissioner Madame Vargas and Mr. Miguel Arice from ACAU, the Uruguayan agency. Maybe the thing here is to ask you what has been said and shared resonates in your countries. So if you please, for example, if you want to jump in first.
Yeah, sure. Well, thank you. This has been very enlightening. And I'm not going to refer to the market ones, specifically the ones you presented, because the market is the market. I think it's rather more interesting for the audience to hear from the policymaker standpoint, which is what we are, the policymakers of our countries. I do agree that there's a lack of awareness, and these type of reports bring a lot of clarity. And it's a very powerful tool, not only for the policymakers, but also for the producers and for everyone involved in the whole process. And by lack of awareness, it includes spreading out the info, accessing the info, I do agree. But also the educating part of by producers, the specialization, the becoming more professional, and expert, learning more about the audiences. I think that's something key that's lacking, or that's right now one of the gaps that should be bridged in our countries. I do also think that Latin America cannot be seen as one territory. And I think you mentioned that. Each territory has its own characteristics, specifications, and that should translate into the strategy when a European film is presented in our own territories. And also, I think we should start taking away the stigma of niche film to the European film, because that's the way you're gonna limit your audience, and you will stay in the non-commercial circuit. And I think one thing that I found very interesting from your report precisely is that it's limited to the non-commercial circuit, and that's not what you want. I think in general terms, that's on my side. I think you would have more interesting views, especially coming from the advertising world.
Well, first, thank you so much. It's an honor to be here, with you. Also, thank you, Isabela, and the same Katharine, for all the information that you shared with us. I agree with you, Mariana. So one quick question to the audience. How many people here are distributors? Can you raise your hand? 1?
2, 3.
2. How many people are we here? 50 maybe? Yes. Okay. So that's the thing, about this conversation. What are the people, that are having the conversation about this? So first, if you go back to the slide of the obstacles, could we?
Of course.
Well, as Mariana was saying, some obstacles are part of the market. And talking about from the standpoint of an institution, that's a dynamic. That is how the different actors in that market play. And yes, there's going to be a concentration in some cases in Latin America. And yes, there's going to be a risk if you have Uruguayan pesos and you want to buy in euros. Yes, there's a gap. And all those things are part of the dynamic of the market. But then if we talk about, as Mariana was saying, the awareness, and how can we help from our side, is we always say, okay, if someone wants to distribute something in our countries, first, do you have, a plan? Do you have a promotion distribution plan? Because many of the times it doesn't happen. And do you have, a budget allocated for that? So the question is this serious that you really want to distribute because you have a plan and you have a budget? And that's something that many times it doesn't happen. The same way that here we only have 2 distributors, the same thing happens with this question about, do you have a plan? Do you have a budget? You have really the intention, to work in this market. And you have the understanding of how this market, works. And that's what Mariana was saying about the audience. For all of us, it's very challenging. All the changes that are going in the media landscape. And just a quick example about Uruguay. We had this situation that our films were not reaching, the national audience. And suddenly we decided to create this experiment. Let's, license, Uruguayan movies. Let's create a catalog and let's put that catalog in YouTube. Open for the public, because we are a public institution. We have to give access to our taxpayers to what they paid for and to the culture and all that. And suddenly a movie that the name was, I don't know how you say it. It was like Little Cows or something like that. I was completely dead and inactive, found 100,000, people in YouTube that they watched the whole movie. And suddenly, this movie started to be alive again. I have a circuit. So what I'm trying to say is there's a lot going on of trying to find the commitment from, the public standpoint with who wants to distribute, and also trying to find the right information, to connect with that audience. And all these experiments and all these things help, because that information then was taken to try to, let's say, reactivate, our initiatives in the theaters. And that really helped with different initiatives that we are working on. So that's just, an example and through what we did in Uruguay.
And maybe, Katharine, you may want to jump in here in terms of what young people said in relation to these new ways of consuming and also participating in the industry and in the margins.
You see, it's very interesting because we are having 2 conversations at the same time. My sense is we're seeing at this moment elements of a new, I would say, world. It sounds very dramatic, but it's Cannes Film Festival. A new world opening up. And this is where we have our generations who have experienced some form of linear consumption and so on and so forth. And then we have the incoming generations. And I see, obviously final findings will be shared with you in October 25. But what we see very strongly is that this openness in every aspect of filmmaking, which means the story, the way in which we access the story, who makes it, and in which language it is communicated, there's an openness that wasn't there before. Now, I think what's happening here, the key would be to make whatever content which is required to be diverse and global and universal in experience and value for these audiences. I think what is required here is still to make sure that the language of transmission is the one that audiences are familiar with. But audiences are familiar definitely with English, quite a big part. Of course, we're talking about also kind of privileged audiences, but at the same time. So you have the national and you have the English of whatever kind of story comes in, then you have an audience. You have multiple channels, you develop audiences. You create openings in the industry from the policymakers' perspective and the industry itself for newcomers to come and play and learn, and you present them with platforms that are more inclusive than what they are now, you will have more audiences. So I believe, and I will tell you in the findings after we finish our project, that there is an enormous potential, and it would be totally, I think, on the backs of the industry if they do not take this and make the most out of it, because it's a moment it is a moment of global conversation. And I'm not saying this is a theoretical abstract term, you know. This is where the talents are, the leaders are, the money will be, the resources should be. I think it's a good point. And the audiences are critical. They engage critically with content, yeah? And we have, as society, responsibility also to make everything about this ecosystem better. It's glamorous, it can also be better.
Yeah, we have to find a way to include them in every single...
Yeah, I think we have, okay, allow me, I'm a professor, I can say these things. I think we should take the back seat and allow them to lead, not include them in a system that kills talent, basically, that is very sexist. Europe is very sexist. I know what's happening in the Ibero-Latin area of the world. Europe is very sexist, by the way. So we have to break these things down. They harm society, industries, and stories. I will stop because I will continue talking, yeah.
No, but I would like to know from your point of view, the policy-making point of view, what are the programs, what are the strategy, what's going on there, and that can also be interesting for Europe. What are because I know that Dominican Republic has an interesting program in relation to genre. Uruguay, I think that the example of YouTube is fantastic, it's very interesting. So what type of very specific and concrete things we can share so that we learn from each other?
So, and locally in the DR, we have a funding system that allows us to produce a lot. And in 14 years, we've managed to grow. And this is due to a film law that has been stable for 15 years. And that same law also generates some space for the creation of policies that provide for equality, meaning that there are even specifications as to how much a person with certain experience has to gain, no matter if, in terms of wages, because they're fully subsidized basically by this incentive. So no matter if you're a woman or a man, you just have to earn that amount. And this has allowed us to grow in terms of the number of female producers we have in the DR. Right now, here in Cannes, we have around 12 or 15 Dominican and just one man. Most, as you can say, are women. And most of them are producers, precisely. So now that you mentioned sexism being one of the issues, you know, in Latin America also, but that's one thing we, in terms of like programs that we've been working on, but because the law is designed in such a way that enables us. In terms of circulation, although we don't have specific aid for circulation, distribution, in the DR, the Cinematheque is part of our organization. And it's our exhibition and our basically distribution arm. And we have this Cinematheque that travels the whole country. And that's how we're also able to bring the national films to the rest of the country that has no theaters. And this has also grabbed interest from other countries through their embassies that also have access to that specific program, and they're able to show the foreign films in other territories that would otherwise have no chance to watch those films. So that's what we're doing in terms of circulation, aside from having a specific program to support the Dominican filmmakers that make it to festivals, that make it to specific programs within markets. They have a specific aid within our budget.
Marcio?
Well, in our case, first, we have a very strong, relation and tradition in what is our Cinematheque. And also they have this place that is beautiful, it's amazing, and it allows the audience to have a nice experience. And they do a great work. And that's a place where you can, watch, for example, cinema from all over the world. And through them, and their festival and their initiatives, we have this relation with the audience. The Uruguayan cinema has this relation, and Uruguayan cinema, most of it is co-production with Europe. So when we define, European content, well, that's a definition that is very interesting to have a conversation, because somehow we are supporting European content to circulate when we are supporting co-productions. And then also, we have also initiatives of itinerant cinema all around the country. And the most interesting, I think, that we are doing now is this, national catalog, because we have those films and we are working, testing different, possibilities and windows. Maybe it's this, program in this, cinema, theater. Maybe it's this itinerant. It depends on the audience. Again, we try to get all the information that we can about the audience, and then we try to find which is the best way to reach them. And maybe it's through Cinematheque, maybe it's through this, itinerant initiative, maybe it's through YouTube, and that's how we're working now. And what we are trying to do is get as much information and feedback and data, to be smarter in our decisions, and then to have an interesting conversation with whoever wants to distribute cinema in Uruguay, because we can put on the table some information.
Maybe, Isabela, you want to add something in relation to lack of awareness, very, very, very briefly, or co-productions, and also because, co-production it's key for both regions, but also European cinema is a concept within people's minds, but at the same time, it refers to a few countries. So that's also interesting to highlight.
I guess co-productions is also seen as one of the main strength of European cinema in Latin America. It's a complex task, isn't it? Because this is more about the policymakers and, the people involved in these agreements. Having said that, it's clear that it's necessary to not only update them for current industry needs, and when I say current industry needs, streaming is one of them, of course, just digital distribution, but distribution in general would be great, and promotion, because quite often those agreements focus more on co-production, but they don't talk much, they don't touch much in promotion and distribution, and it's very clear that this is a part that needs more attention, let's put it this way. Apart from that, considering that both regions have many countries, so Europe and Latin America, more multilateral co-production agreements would be great. Bilateral agreements are good as well, but to go one by one, it can be quite difficult. Another thing that could help the film professionals reach those agreements is actually making sure there was some sort of central database, maybe multilingual. A lot of them were saying how complex, how difficult it is to go from a different website each time with a different language each time, trying to find out what it is exactly that it means, so they can apply, so they can go through the motions. So all of these could actually facilitate and make co-productions easier, I would say so. In the talking about lack of awareness, I think Marcio reached a good point there. To be honest, and I understand this is asking a lot of independent distributors, and quite often they can't really do that, I suppose, but more and more, considering social media and you know, online media in general, you need targeted marketing campaigns. You actually need to know your audience. You need to go to social media. Influencers are important. In Argentina, for instance, we have a channel that's called Te Lo Resumo, okay, but basically just summarizes the films and has about 7 million followers. So it's big. So you need to be across that. You need to know which channels actually are interesting for that type of film that you're promoting. It's not more, oh, I just promoting whatever, no newspapers. It actually needs to be targeted. So that's a big one with the lack of awareness. And if the, again, as I was saying about the co-production agreements, that we need bigger focus on promotion and distribution. If you make the film, but no one knows the film exists, then again, and it's not just a matter of, good stories. You know, good stories always reach the audience. Do they? Because a lot of bad stories reach the audience with the right promotion. So just something to think about it.
Yeah. So we have to wrap up, but I want you to have the last words. So in a minute or so, share with us all your key message, your beginning with Marcio, for example. What is that you want to, with all?
Well, again, from the institutional standpoint, the only thing is we are trying to put on the table all the tools that could help whoever wants to distribute cinema, but it's a matter of understanding what exactly, when we talk about the title, the product, or whatever you want to call it, to understand exactly what you have in your hands, and then to understand exactly who you want to reach. And then when you know from where to where, then we can find that reach, and with the tools that we can put on the table, maybe we can help from the institutional standing point. But it's a conversation about an ecosystem and how it works and what is the role of each part. So now we are, through this very interesting, like research, having this, approach through some of these ecosystems, like roles, but it's a bigger conversation that we are trying to have, at least in Uruguay, and again, trying to develop these tools, but we still need these, companies and players that would like to take, the task to distribute cinema, and in a cross way, not only, European in Latin America, but Latin America in Europe. That sometimes it's the same. It's a co-production.
So yeah, I agree with what Marcio has said. Again, I think this is a matter of awareness, and I would have to stress the use of data. I think it's something that's lacking a lot in our countries. The importance of audiovisual observatories to be that that source of data, but then each country has the responsibility of having good quality data, on-time data, which is not only useful for policymakers, but for the distributors. These are business people. This is money we're talking about. They need to be able to access data that actually matters to them, for them to design those plans, those marketing plans for those European projects that at some point are expected to thrive in our territories. So that's one thing that I think that's my takeaway here, and that we could do on our side as policymakers.
Well, I agree with Mariana on that. I guess I'm biased, I'm a researcher, but that is extremely important. If you know where you're going anyway, it's okay, isn't it? So you need to know the film industry well, and studies like that, obviously, like this one, are important. So the film industry professionals understand the market better, their markets better, but also the policymakers can understand this. It's important to have this dialogue between the film professionals and the policymakers. So you actually understand the market needs, you understand what the industry needs, and do the policies accordingly. Let's hope, the relationship between Europe and Latin America just gets better and better. Yes, let's hope so. One last thing, because there are so many film professionals here, please do come talk to us. It would be great to hear from you. If you disagree as well, I want you here. It would be great to continue the discussion.
And on that note, since there are no magic wands, or are they, I want to ask you questions. Are there any creators here in the audience? You can, don't be ashamed, just raise your hands. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Thank you. Are there any representatives of policy-making institutes, whether it is funding institutes or governmental institutes or independent authorities? 5, 6, 7, 8. Thank you. Thank you. There's no shame. It's just a job. Are there any professors here? Monsieur. 1, 2, 2, 2. Oh, hello. Who is the rest? Who are you people? Production, I'm sorry. I said creators. For me, it's everything about creation. Producers. No? Yes. Fantastic. Oh, look. Are you ashamed of your professions? Like, say, we're producers. Fantastic. And distributors, we said earlier, is there anything new because some people left and some came?
3.
Huh? What?
We have 3 or so.
Exhibitors, no? Anyone who owns a cinema? No. Oh, there you go.
2. Okay, fantastic. Well, thank you so much for being here and doing what the industry itself should be doing en masse. Because I think the last word, so to speak, in a conversation is let's talk some more. And more of us talk some more. I believe that we are living in very exciting times of potential. And I'm not saying this because I'm trying to sell anything, except to ask you to QR this, yeah? Because then you can come to our website and you will see what we do, and we have more in store. But seriously, do get in touch. We are everywhere on the websites and the internet. Do get in touch to share or vent if you want, or to just connect, or because you're curious, or because you're bored with what you're doing and you want to expand your horizons. And of course, the idea is that we keep talking of inclusion, transparency, and the next topic for next year's festival would be the role of public institutions in supporting the industry, because we have a lot to say about that, by the way. And with that, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you all for attending. Thank you to those watching online.
Thank you.
To this.
Technicians and organization.
Yes,
thank you very much for helping us.
This panel on circulation of European films, film preferences, Latin American markets, presented by the Iberoamerican Audiovisual Observatory, the CAACI, and the REBOOT project. Thank you. Gracias.